Welcome to Mindless Entertainment. My name is Jesse Milestone, and we've talked a lot lately about what makes a female character not great, what makes her not really a strong one, what makes her not enjoyable and fun to watch, and we've just thrown in there that there's so many other great female characters out there. Why aren't we talking about them more and writing them more? And I will admit that I have been doing those characters a disservice by not discussing them on my channel. So I made a video not too long ago comparing Alita to Captain Marvel and discussing the merits and value of Alita and why she is a very strong female character. So today I'd like to do the same thing with Game of Thrones. So we're going to talk about a lot of the women in Westeros, not just in Westeros, in the Game of Thrones world, because there are so many powerful women in this book. We're going to talk a little more book-centric, but it's fairly relevant to the films as well. So, I want to break down first, before we dive into all the characters we're going to talk about a bunch of them. We're going to talk about, the obvious ones like Sansa Stark, Arya Stark, Catelyn Stark, we've got Ygritte, we've got Asha Greyjoy. Yes, we're calling her Asha Greyjoy because we can tell the difference between Asha and Osha, so get over it. It's Asha frickin' Greyjoy. We'll talk about Daenerys. We're gonna talk about, effing just forgot her name. Hopefully it'll come to me. Marjorie Tyrell's grandmother. I'll just call her Grandma Tyrell if I can't remember her name. I was literally just talking about this with someone 5 minutes ago, and now I'm like, oh my god, I forgot her name. It starts with an O, maybe. I don't know. We'll talk about the Sand Snakes. We'll talk about Brienne. We'll talk about Cersei. You get the idea. We're going to talk about a lot of women today. We're not going to talk about everyone. We'll talk about Melisandre as well. We're not talking about every woman because there's a lot of them. There's a few we won't hit on. If there's anyone I missed in that list, let me know in the comments below. If there's anybody I missed in my discussion, let me know as well in the comments, and maybe I can make an addendum and discuss some of those in detail as well. So before we get into just running down the characters and be like, that's why that's one strong. First of all, the beauty of this show is that they are strong in so many different ways. Each one of them is strong in a different way, but they do fall into one of three main categories. Some of them are sort of a blend of these categories, but the three main categories of strength that these characters fall into is operating within the established society, patriarchal society. And I'm saying this, I'm not being like, oh, the patriarchy, but just in Westeros, and most of the areas in Game of Thrones, as in most of the places in the world, are things like your name, your lineage, your bloodline, your inheritance are typically passed down on the man's side. That's the basic meaning of a patriarchal society. It doesn't mean, oh, men have all the power, women have all the this. It just means that that's the way it is. And of course, we're looking at a place like Westeros that is a little more, more medieval-esque, where men are the ones in the positions of power. Men are the ones making most of the decisions. However, that does not mean that the women are weak. That does not mean that they're helpless. That does not mean that they lack power themselves. That does not mean that they're not able to, even within this system, become some of the most powerful people in Westeros. Or in this entire world. And that for me is that one of the great Cersei is the greatest example of that. And I hate Cersei with a burning fiery passion. But we're talking one of the most powerful women in Westeros, who does things by the book, if you want to get real technical about it. She doesn't try to usurp the throne for herself. She doesn't try to take power for herself. She doesn't she's not trying to overthrow the existing regimes to be like, well, I should be the queen of all things. She does this all very legitimately, without usurping tradition, without pushing those things out. She is, if you will, your perfect lawful evil character. I know I keep going back to the D&D character. I just think it's such a great way to describe characters in fiction. Anyway, so she's your perfect example. She operates exactly within the society that she was raised in, and she figures out how to manipulate this society and the people around her in order to get what she wants, in order to get the most power imaginable. Obviously, she's a bad and unscrupulous person, so great things don't always happen to her, but she's accomplished incredible things at the same time. She has done amazing things with her power, and she's, so that makes her a really excellent example of this character that operates within the framework and still manages to succeed at a very high level. Catelyn Stark is another example of someone who operates within the power structure, and she obviously meets with an unfortunate demise, and that's really just the fault of Stark House being all too noble cool and not all the time. So you have another character who's operating very much within the framework to stick, and she's a little different from Cersei because her interests aren't in power, and so this is a different kind of strong woman. Cersei's a strong woman because she desires these things that we usually, for some reason, attribute to men, as if women don't want to be powerful and wealthy just as much as their male counterparts. So she's a great example of saying these traits, these things that we call toxic masculinity or ascribed to men, these aren't masculine traits. Here's a woman who wants all these things just as much as the men around her, but she's going to play by the rules dictated to her because she's a woman to figure out how to get that. She's smart and shrewd and cunning and very powerful in her own right. And then you have Catelyn. You have Catelyn Stark, Tully, who is not after power. She's not interested in those things. That doesn't make her not a strong character. She's an incredibly powerful character, and she's driven by a very classic female desire, the desire to protect her children. She's driven by her desires as a mother. Now, just like all of the other characters who are driven by certain desires, that drive and those desires, they make they give them flaws. They trip them up in some places because they get blinded to the other things in their life. But she will go through immense pain. As evidenced in the book, she comes back from the dead and is still rabid about avenging her children and protecting her children. I mean, she is rabid about this. So you're talking about an incredible amount of strength coming from this woman. And I got someone over here who might be able to help me out. I totally forgot Grandmama Tyrell's name. I totally forgot her name. If you want to type that for me, that'd be amazing. I don't know why I just completely blanked on it. I know we were just talking about it. But anyway, so thank you. So the next one, we're on to the next ones who also operate within this existing framework, the framework that's been built for them. Lady Olenna Tyrell and Margaery Tyrell. Both of these women operate within the world that was built for them. Olenna's a little more subversive about it. She's not necessarily trying to change the system, but she's a little bit more, she's not playing by the rules quite the same way that Cersei or Catelyn do. She's subverting it. She's finding workarounds. She's finding back doors to make sure that she gets the things that she wants. And of course, is an incredibly powerful character with an immense amount of gravitas, both in the books and in the show. And Margaery Tyrell is a classic example. And so she has, so Olenna actually is a kind of an interesting blend between a Cersei and a Catelyn, where she is motivated by her love of her children, of her family, and a desire to protect her family, as well as a definite desire for power. And she's part of her definitely thinks having that power is the most effective way to protect her family. So she's a nice blend of those. You have one type of woman who family's important, or family matters, but wealth and power are more important. There's the mother character who children are everything to, and then there's Olenna who she doesn't fight the battles the conventional way. She wants to have the power to protect her children and preserve her lineage. She's very much a matriarch in that way, in that classic traditional sense. She's a very classic and traditional woman who's not afraid to do what it takes and subvert expectations to do it. We have Margaery Tyrell as sort of your more classic example of a woman obtaining power in a system set up for men to have power, where she just plays the book. She plays men like a fiddle by playing by the book. Oh, I'm this beautiful creature. Love me, worship me. Let me use all my feminine wiles to seduce you and pull you in and all of that stuff. So she's a very interesting character in that regard, because that's, again, she operates without the type of power that Cersei has, being, the queen, essentially. Not essentially being the queen. So she's operating without that same level of power, but she's still using the workaround. She's still using the gifts that she has by being a woman. She doesn't deny those. She doesn't deny her femininity. She embraces it wholeheartedly. And rather than allowing that to make her weak, she uses the femininity to help her become a stronger person and to help her get what she wants, which are, also the things that Lady Olenna wants. So those are your characters that operate pretty strictly within the given society, the given rules of society. And you have your two other types of characters. You have your characters that kind of just operate outside of society. They're not necessarily trying to change the structure, but they don't have, they're not bound to the same rules that the structure imparts upon them. And then you have the women who are, of course, trying to break down barriers, change the way things are, change things into a more matriarchal structure, make it more acceptable for the women to be the leaders, for the women to have the power. Your classic example of this person is, of course, Daenerys Targaryen. She is your quintessential feminist in a way. Like and again, the thing I love about George R. R. Martin, the way he writes these characters, characters is no one's a caricature. No one's a caricature of this old-fashioned woman who just accepts the patriarchy and let the men do whatever they want. And no one's a caricature of this new feminism where we just hate the men and shit on all the men all the time, and it's all about the women and girl power. Yeah, the show has a couple moments of sort of doing a little bit of that, but for the most part, the way these characters are written, no one's a caricature. They're all these real fleshed out people who actually exist in the world, for better or for worse. And so Daenerys is your hard-hitting, I'm a woman and it doesn't matter, I'm still powerful. She embraces her femininity. She embraces her sexual desires. She embraces being beautiful. She makes herself attractive. She wears nice things. She embraces the feminine aspect of things, but she wants the power as well. She doesn't want to play the game the way Cersei does. She doesn't want to play by rules other people wrote for her. She wants to rewrite the rules so that she can be in charge. So this is the total opposite to Cersei in that respect, where Cersei wants the power but wants to work within the framework she's given to get it. Daenerys says, screw your framework. Daenerys says, screw your rule book, sets it on fire with dragon breath, and is like, I'm gonna do whatever I want, bitch. Which makes her very classic, very much outside of the spectrum of those things. And now you have a bunch of characters as well that exist on this side of things that eschew their traditional feminism. One that comes to mind is Asha Greyjoy. She doesn't eschew the traditional feminism hardcore. She's not like, I don't like being a woman. Obviously, she likes being a woman, but she doesn't. She owns her femininity in a much more masculine way. We see that even the way that she shamelessly flirts with her brother. I mean, just to dick him over, but that's her personality. She's outgoing. She's not afraid to look for what she wants, to ask for what she wants. I want this dude. I will take him in a womanly fashion or a manly fashion, but in a woman's body. Who knows? Whatever floats your boat and makes your tastes go. I've lost my words there. I tried so hard. Anyway, she is still very much a woman, but she eschews some of the prettier things. She doesn't dress up all pretty. She doesn't want to be this Daenerys Targaryen of like, I am going to screw the system because I want to be the female leader and be beautiful and female. She's like, nah, I'll be a badass leader. I'll wear pants. I will put on the pants and do the man thing, but screw you and your idea of lineage and passing it down to the man. I should be a leader as well. She wants to challenge that system to say, like, I deserve just as much credit and recognition and power. It shouldn't matter that I'm a woman. So she's kind of like, she's like your OG feminist. She's like, she's your Rosie the Riveter, right? She's like, I just want to be tough and strong and viewed as a strong woman. I'm a strong woman who deserves these things because I've earned them. I don't know why I just turned like vaguely southern there. Who knows? Anyway, and that's like, she's very much, I've related to her a lot as a character. She's very much my kind of woman. You know, I can be whatever I want to be. I can, and once again, one of the things I love about this character is because this is my life. Here's a woman who has all of these traits that we call toxic masculinity. I'm sorry, those traits don't belong to men. I can be just as toxic as you. Huzzah! So that's what I love about her. She's such a Greyjoy. And the Greyjoys, if you want to look at it on a surface and stupid level, you go, they're the epitome of toxic masculinity, raping and pillaging and yet one of their most powerful leaders is a woman. Oh my god. So in that way, it subverts this idea of toxic masculinity because you have a woman who embodies all of those principles of your pure toxic man, but she's a woman. Oh my god. How does it work? It's like people are complex and don't fall into little boxes and molds you make for them. Oh my god. Incredible. What a thought. So I love her for that. And then you slip over to another character that I would argue kind of fits somewhere between challenging the order and fitting into the order, and that's Brienne of Tarth. So Brienne is your giganto knight lady. She's like, I want to be a knight, and I will be. So in that way, she's like Asha. She's like, I'm going to have the things, I want to do the man things. I want to have the man stuff and do the man things. She doesn't totally eschew her femininity, and we see that a little bit in her proclivities. We see Asha is very much the man's woman, where she's like, I'm just going to fuck these bitches because it's what I do. We see Brienne be a lot more sensitive and have a feeling side. I mean, she definitely has a crush on Jaime now, but her whole thing in the beginning was being completely in love with and devoted to Flower Boy. Classic, right? The big tough woman's in love with the gay man. Ha! What a trope. Anyway, so she, but she's not, it's not that she's trying to challenge the structure of the society. It's not that she necessarily needs it to change. She just wants to be a part of it that she's not really allowed to be, or not really supposed to be. She just wants the society to accept her in this non-traditional role. So she's she's like a non-traditional woman in that way. She's like your very, very OG feminist in that kind of way. Like your first non-traditional traditional woman, like the first woman who wanted to go out and get a job instead of stay home and get married. Even though part of her really did want to get married, she had a point to prove, so she had to go out and have a career. And I say this semi-facetiously, there's no judgment here. This is just a beautiful cross-section. I hope you're starting to see this. This is such a beautiful cross-section of the different types of women that there are, because all of these women exist in the world. They're fleshed out and they're realistic, and they're offering a perspective. They're offering a type of strength. Hers is, quite frankly, physical brute strength. Here's just the outlier of a female who's a giganto boss lady who can beat the crap out of all the men around her because she's big and she's strong and she trains. And that's awesome because those women do exist. You have female MMA fighters that could take out your average guy in the street. No problem. No effing problem. And that's her. She's like, I'm just big and strong. I'm still a woman. That doesn't take away from me being a woman. It doesn't mean I need to challenge your ideas of what being a man or being a woman are. It just means you need to accept that this is who I am. I woman, I She-Hulk, punch! That's just Brienne, and I love her for that. So I think, like I said, so she's on that line. She's not fitting into the established order. She's also not challenging it. Now we have Sansa. Sansa's a really interesting character. She's one of the more dynamic characters in the series. I'm not sure if how sold I am on her, but I do like her arc. I like that she goes from the closest thing we have to the demure woman who just accepts the way things are, the silly, dumb airhead, your stereotype of like, I'm just a pretty, pretty princess who wants to sew my clothes and have nice things. And then she turns around, she's like, wait, this is nonsense. She gets woke, if you will. And she turns around, she's like, I want to challenge the order as well. Now, here's the fun thing. I just like to put this in as a side. When I'm talking about all this order challenging, one of the great things and why the feminism and the strong women are so good in this show is there's no indication at any point that because these women want power and want strength, that they're gonna be like, F the men, get rid of all the men, or subjugate all the men, or that any of them are afraid of strong men. That's one of the most beautiful things about these characters. Not a single one of them fear a strong man. Not a single one of them are going to back down in his presence and go, oh my God, I can't be myself around this man. All of them are just as willing to take up those challenges, see these strong men and be like, I got this. And that's what makes it beautiful, is the whole idea they don't have to change society. They don't have to change the men around them to change the way things are. They just have to change the way people view them. They just have to change the way that they are accepted in society. They don't have to castrate anybody else. I mean, kill your enemies. Sure, everyone's got to kill their enemies. Hell, if I had enemies, I would stab them to death too. But you have they are not afraid to challenge the strong men. They don't have to weaken them or take anything away from them, detract from the strength of these characters. I mean, these women go up. Sansa goes up against like a total effing psychopath, and comes out like damaged and attacked and assaulted. Which is another great thing about this show, by the way, which I definitely want to talk about more, is this fear of hurting women now. And this show is not afraid to go there. It's not afraid to show that the reason that Sansa got strong was because of all the crap she went through, all the times she was beaten or raped or brutalized. And that's where her strength comes from. It's from surviving that. Because we don't care about survivors right now. We care about as victims. We don't see victims as strong. And what you have in Game of Thrones is a show full of survivors. Everyone in it. No one just wallows around being a victim. They are all survivors. That's what makes Sansa's arc so great as a strong female character, is that she's so set up to just be the victim. And she comes through and becomes a survivor and owns her strength and power. That's what's awesome about her. So moving on, let's go to her sister. Her sister is the classic one who doesn't operate within the rules of your world. She ends up being mistaken for a boy for a lot of the show and goes sort of undercover as a boy for a lot of the story. And now she just has transcended gender. She's your gender neutral character. She can be anybody. But also has some definite, like as a child, is the tomboy, is your classic tomboy, eschews the traditional gender roles and goes so far as to not just be like, I'm going to change the roles. I'm going to fight in the society to change things, but just takes herself out of society. She's like, society doesn't accept me for who I am. I'm going to go away. I'm going to go find some people who do accept me for who I am, or figure out how to become the person that I need to be, how to actualize myself outside of your rules in your society, which is another great, excellent form of strength. If you're not the kind of person who's like, I'm going to fight for power and have the power, then you're not the kind of person who's going to fight for this massive, large-scale change. Your change, it happens in your own way, where you're just going to go off and do your own thing. You'll be like, screw you guys. I don't need to fight this battle. I don't need to prove a point to anybody. I just don't exist within your framework, so I'm going to go exist somewhere else. And that makes her great. So moving on from her, so that's similarly, I think Melisandre kind of operates in a similar way. She's coming in as, a red priestess, which is a very different religion than what she finds in Westeros, and a lot of this challenging of norms happens in Westeros itself. So she comes to Westeros, she brings her own standards and practices as a part of her own religion, and she's like, F you guys, I don't care about the way you do things here, we do things my way. And sure, she's beholden to the red god and all that stuff, but when we see her, as she operates within the story, she is so fierce and independent, and just, I do things my way. And she's, she represents a different kind of woman because she's still, unlike Arya, she isn't just taking herself out of society. She's not like, screw you, I'm out, guys. She's very much involved in it and a part of it to try to bring about the thing that's important to her. It's nothing to do with upholding the existing order or smashing the existing order. It's everything to do with her zealotry. I believe in this thing. I have this strong belief, and in that way she's a very quintessential, or she's a very stereotypical archetype. Male or female doesn't matter. She's the zealot. She has a belief, and she's so firm in that belief, and she's so strong in that belief, she's going to see it through to the end. And there's some fascinating things about her character, about the traditional ideas of being a seductress and being, the witch who does those things. So there's some elements of almost folkloric power and evil that were traditionally ascribed to women, for good or for ill. I mean, you can look at it and you'd be like, whoa, women were burned for being witches, which is super messed up. But at the same time, women had this immense amount of power in that regard, in that respect. And the idea of a female sorcerer, that was one of the first ways that women in any kind of media, even as villains, were powerful. They were made to be sorcerers. They controlled magic. So even if they were bad, they were still powerful in that way. So that's so I think she exists very much operates outside the norm. Then you have people like Ygritte, who's sort of a little bit of a blend of operating outside the system and wanting to change the system. Words English. Because she's like this she's your classic liberated woman, right? She don't take no shit from nobody. She makes the rules. She's in charge in the relationship. She almost strays a little bit more into being your new kind of feminist, but I don't think it's in a super toxic way. It's in a way where she's just like, hey, John, look at things differently. Think about things differently. And she kind of almost represents that problem side because she's not always willing to look at things differently. So she does have those difficulties in there, but she's also just like, hey, I'm the representation in your life of something you've never seen before. I don't play by your rules. I don't operate within your system. And there is an element where she's trying to change it, because she's talking to Jon Snow, trying to change his opinions and outlooks on things, and she definitely has opinions about the way women are treated in Westeros and how women have to act in Westeros, and she's like, I ain't gonna do that, but she's not really out there fighting the good fight to make those changes. She's just like, here I am in my own society, living by my liberated laws, so here you go. So it's another, some blend between a little bit of a newer feminist and a little bit of that Rosie the Riveter, I'm just strong and good at stuff, where, in conjunction with a little bit of that pig-headedness of my way is obviously the right way and you're dumb, which, to be frank, Jon Snow kind of needs to hear, because he's very much in a my way is the right way and you're dumb. So she's very much a vehicle in the story to get him to open up his mind. It just happens that she works out as an allegory for feminism in that respect. And now, all right, lastly, I think I hit everyone I said I was going to hit, except for the Sand Snakes. And the Sand Snakes are interesting. They are a blend as well. They're very much a blend of the change the system and the preserve the system. Kind of like Brienne, but they also have a little bit of, they're really the three-way split. A little bit of that element of I don't play by your rules. Because you have House Martell, never been conquered, right? House Martell is its own thing. It's never been conquered. So they kind of have their own rules and laws down there in Dorne, and they're not playing by anybody else's rules. So they've never had to, they've never been forced to, but they also understand the rules of the game. They understand how the game is played, and they would like to see it change. Dorne is in a situation where Martell lineage does not necessarily pass down by the men, because they just don't have any men anymore. So they're like, all right, Sand Snakes it is. Woohoo, we got you. So you have that element where they've taken up the mantle of the men, and that's another interesting, that's they're the closest to being a matriarchal society within the society, because the strong men, the young warrior men are gone, they have to take up that mantle. It's now their responsibility to be the warriors, and so they obviously get used to that, and they don't want to give that back and give that up and be like, all right, I'll just subservient to a man now. But at the same time, they also understand the rules of the society that they're attached to and how to subvert those in really interesting ways as well. So basically, you have a massive variety of female characters in this universe, and they all operate. So many of them are pretty much all of them are strong in some way, and all of them have different kinds of strengths, which just shows the beauty and variety you can have in strong women. You have so many different types of strong women out there. It's idiotic that we keep going back to writing the same type over and over and over again. This indefeatable Mary Sue of a character who doesn't really make any sense in the real world. So F that and go Game of Thrones for bringing us this beautiful cross-section of incredible female characters. Are there incredible male characters too? Yeah, of course there are. If you guys really want me to, I'll make a video talking about the incredible male characters and how they also do the same thing to represent the different kinds of male strengths. So if you like this video, if you enjoyed that and you want to hear me do another similar type of breakdown talking about the different types of male characters that we see and the different tropes and archetypes that they represent in Game of Thrones, let me know that. If you enjoyed this video in general, go ahead and press that like button or suppress it, oppress it. Someone even depressed it recently. How sad for that like button. Whatever makes you happy, do it to the like button. Hit that notifications bell. Make sure you're subscribed so you never miss a video. There's a video popping up in the corner that says get involved with me. That is all the information you need. It's got my Patreon. It's got contact info, it's got social media stuff, t-shirts, they're so cool, you should check them out, you should get them. All that info is in the links in that video, so go ahead and click on that, and we'll talk again real soon. So you guys are the best, I love you so much, bye-bye!